Welcome, fellow Tarnished, to Dark Fantasy Games, a new channel dedicated to Elden Ring. In this video, we're going to be discussing the topic, can you beat Elden Ring? And I guess to a certain extent this is quite a theoretical question, because none of us have actually completed Elden Ring yet, so we don't really know the answer to that. But, you know, I've got confidence in you guys, and I'm sure a lot of people will definitely complete the game. However, I think there's also going to be an awful lot of people that maybe are coming into the game with low level skills when it comes to this type of game, and this is kind of where this channel is really going to help out. And there's going to be a lot of channels that are going to offer tips and tricks, and that is awesome. But one thing that I find about being able to beat a game is some people can give you tips, but you can't actually translate that into the game. And we all take things differently, we all learn differently, and that's just human nature, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely fine. We've all got different skill levels when it comes to playing games. There's people out there that are so awesome at games, I just sometimes can't believe it myself. And, you know, I think with a little bit of time, effort and practice, I think we can all become excellent at a game that we may find hard at the start. I'm sure at some point we think we can do something only to fail hard once we give it a shot. I can remember a time when I was younger and I thought at the time breakdancing looked really easy until I tried to spin on my head and ended up wearing a neck brace for the next 3 weeks. It just kind of shows that sometimes things look easier than they actually are. I think the same comes with games as well. You can watch all the gameplay and someone else doing it, but it's sometimes more difficult for you to implement yourself. So looking at the gameplay we've seen so far of Elden Ring, I think a lot of it has come from early network tests, and I think it has been confirmed that the characters that a lot of these testers were playing were actually buffed characters. They're not going to be that way when you first jump into the game in the final build, meaning that the game is definitely going to be a lot more challenging. I think what we should probably do is use maybe the Dark Souls games as a baseline for this discussion, just purely for the fact that Elden Ring pretty much is an open world Dark Souls game. You know, we can't really deny that, although there is a few differences, and we'll discuss that a little bit further along in the video and how that may change the dynamic of the gameplay and the challenge. But I think with the Dark Souls games, anyone who picked them up for the first time and had never played that type of game had probably a massive shock to their system, just purely for the fact that it was just so brutal. It's not one of those types of games where you can just run in, hack and slash, unless you've got a really powerful build. It is the type of game where you really have to learn from your mistakes and learn to analyze different enemies, the locations within the map or the areas that you're going through within the game that you're playing, and understanding their combos. You know, when they're finished the particular combo, how much of a window you've got to actually strike, how to draw single enemies away from mobs so you're not getting mobbed by a large group of enemies that are likely to stun lock you, which usually ends in misery. I think one thing Dark Souls did really well is clever placement of enemies. They always put that one annoying enemy in some location where you haven't spotted them, and you think you've got a chance to be able to get a decent hit on an enemy, and suddenly you get shot in the back from an archer up in a tower somewhere, and you stumble, and then before you know it, you're dead. And once you learn that and you get to know that, you can progress in the game. The more you play the game, the better you get. And I think that is going to be very true with beating Elden Ring. Even if you're new and you've never played any of the Dark Souls games before, with some patience and perseverance, you're going to be able to do it eventually. But that's all it's going to take. It's going to take patience and perseverance, and it's going to take muscle memory as well. Not just your hands, but your brain. You've got to learn the way the game rotates, so to speak, how the cogs turn within the game, the inner workings of it. And once you strip it down like that to its bare bones, you're going to start getting better at the game and you're going to do better. And I think for me, when I first started playing the Dark Souls games, it was a shock to the system. But eventually, the more I played them, the further I got, the more I understood, to the point where I eventually completed it. And then every playthrough thereafter got easier and easier. But like anything, if you take some time away, you're going to go back and you've probably got a bit rusty. It's a little bit like learning to ride a bike. They say once you've learned to ride a bike, you'll never forget and you'll always be able to ride a bike. But if you've not rode a bike for 6 months to a year and you jump on one, you might be a little bit wobbly at first until things kick back in with your muscle memory. And I think that's absolutely true with games like Dark Souls. There's been times where I've had time away and then I've come back and suddenly it seems a lot more difficult than I remembered. And it's just all down to that muscle memory, that you've not quite got things synced the way you had them when you was playing the game a lot. I think in order to beat Elden Ring, it's going to be a matter of figuring out the new game mechanics, the enemy types, the best weapons to use with which enemies, and the best spells to be able to use. The thing about Elden Ring is it does give you a larger space, and with combat that could potentially help you when you're fighting enemies out in the open world, because you've got more space to be able to maneuver and to dodge, and there's less enemies probably standing along a cliff edge that I tend to find would usually cause you issues if you was to try and roll out the way of an attack and end up rolling off the cliff, which I've done plenty of times in my playthroughs of some of the Dark Souls games. And that's just one of many things that happen with the way the maps were designed. I think there's going to be specific areas within Elden Ring that are probably going to be the same, because Elden Ring still has its dungeons and areas that are going to be a little bit more claustrophobic in terms of, you know, the focus of the combat. But I do feel though that when you're out in the open world, you've got more space to be able to fight these enemies. You've got the mount that you can use for mounted combat, or to be able to escape quickly with, if you need to get out of an area that has maybe too many higher level enemies that are a little bit too hard for you early on in the game. And it is just a matter of then re-evaluating which enemies you may be strong enough to be able to take on at that point, or that you're ready for, or if you need to go off and do something else. And I think that's something Elden Ring is going to do really well. The fact that if you get stuck on something, it doesn't stop your progress. You can go off and do other stuff. There's other things to explore, other things to find, other routes through to different locations with multiple ways through. And I just really like that Elden Ring has a lot more options for you to go in as a gamer, regardless of your skill level, to be able to enjoy what it has to offer. Not to mention the stealth elements that are also going to be utilised maybe for some more difficult enemies to get those damage boosts when you're attacking them from stealth. But another great thing that I've always loved about the Souls community is their willingness to help in terms of sharing tips and tricks and things to help people get through the game. It doesn't matter how you're going to approach playing Elden Ring, there's so many different ways to be able to play the game. Just the same as there was with the Dark Souls games. There's going to be the speedrunners out there that want to do the game as fast as possible. There's going to be the people doing the game that want to do the no-hit challenges and not get hit at all. And there's going to be the players like me who actually enjoy fighting every single enemy that I come across, because I want to test my mettle to a certain extent and I want to see if I can kill everything in the Dark Souls world. And that is unfortunately pretty much how I played a lot of the Dark Souls games. You know, a lot of these enemies can be avoided. You can run past them. You don't necessarily have to engage with these enemies in combat. But I used to enjoy doing that because it used to test me and test the types of weapons I was using and how much damage they would do. So really it just depends on your mindset of when you go into the game, on how you want to play it. And that could potentially be the difference between you beating the game or not beating the game. It's all about your mindset and the challenge you set for yourself when you're actually playing the game. So I think really the question that I want to leave you guys with in this video is, do you think you can beat Elden Ring? And if you do, let me know in the comments below how you're going to do it. I'll be really interested to hear your strategies and plans for beating some of the enemy types that you're going to come across in the Elden Ring. I think pretty much everyone who plays Elden Ring is going to be able to complete it. They might just need to do it in different ways. They may need help from guides, help from co-op partners. Who knows? Some people might be able to blast through the whole game absolutely solo and ace it no problem. And that's cool because we're all different and we've all got different skill levels. But we can always get better, and I think the great thing nowadays is we do have outlets such as YouTube, which gives us so much content to be able to find tips and tricks videos like what we're going to be doing here on Dark Fantasy Games. So if you're going to want to see some future tips videos and me sharing some things that I find in the game that may be helpful to you guys or you might find interesting, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The channel is new and it really will help, and I thank you very much if you do that today. So this brings us to the end of the video, and before I go, I would just like to say to you guys, may you be blessed with a curseless journey.